I am Dr. Pavitra Bharadwaj and I teach computer science in Delhi University. Welcome to this series on e-commerce. So as you all must be watching, we have taken a few topics on e-commerce already, and this will be our fourth main lecture in the series. So friends, we all know, that how technology has completely taken over our lives in all fields of, our day-to-day activities, particularly, after the pandemic, during the lockdowns, we have seen a massive transition of technology enablement in all aspects of human activities, whether it is business, whether it is communication, or it is, commerce, or it is even teaching, learning, and definitely these lecture series have proved to be a boon in that sense, right? So we will again begin this series. So this is a standard level e-commerce lecture series which is aimed for students of undergraduate and maybe some other commerce stream students who are pursuing a course in e-commerce. So this lecture we have been talking about the basics of e-commerce, what is e-commerce, what is the process of e-commerce, what is the significance of e-commerce, and how e-commerce is different from the other conventional brick and mortar or brick and click businesses, right? So to continue and to take it forward, we will again start with the phase of launching an online business, right? So as we have discussed earlier also, that this is a complete cyclical process in which we talk about the different steps which are involved while we are creating an online business. So definitely when you're talking about setting up a business, right? So setting up a business will have certain basic planning and strategizing. This step remains common whether we are talking about an e-business or we are talking about a normal conventional brick and mortar or an offline business, right? So planning and strategizing we had discussed in great detail in our previous lecture. What all is a part of planning and strategizing. Today we are going to talk about the other phases of the website launching and online business activity, how we can launch that, right? So we were talking about infrastructure and resource acquisition phase. So now again here this is a very critical element in the online business preparation and online business setting up, because this is quite different from what it would be in a conventional business, right? In a conventional business, infrastructure would mean a building, you would need a shop, a particular physical area, you would need furniture, you would need human resource, right? You would need some capital, etc. Here the infrastructure requirements, the resource requirements may be slightly different, actually quite drastically different from your conventional business, because here technology plays a very critical role. So here the infrastructure will basically revolve around the technological infrastructure, primarily the technology, the computers, the internet, etc., on which the business is going to eventually run. So in this we had seen that the e-commerce has got a very high proportion of technical or technological components which need special attention here. So we had looked at the different technical components. So we had seen the hardware components, we talk about the software components, and then we talk about certain middleware components. So we see that in hardware components we talk about the various devices, the physical devices, the tangible parts of maintaining or creating that kind of infrastructure. So you can have the computers, you can have the servers, you can have the various other devices, maybe scanners, printers, etc., which you will be needing. And then of course the bottom of the thing is that you need a high speed internet connectivity, because everything is going to run on internet, right? Then we talk about the various types of software which will be a part of our e-commerce components, and then there are certain middleware components that we also discuss here. So if you look at the specific hardware and software components, so as I already told you, you will have various kinds of servers, right? So to those who are new or slightly unfamiliar with this terminology, I would like to again stress that the internet basically works on a client server model. Now what is exactly a client and a server model? In a client server model, or basically what is a server computer? So server, wherever we are using the word server, it implies that we are talking about a computer which may be of similar or superior configuration, maybe hardware configuration, maybe the memory, maybe the disk space, maybe the processing power. So it may have superior processing capabilities than a normal usual computer. Right, because it is designed to accept a multiple, a much broader framework of activities, of functions, much heavier load of data transaction depending on what server we are talking about, right? So simplest example of a server could be, a print server which is set up in, say, computer labs of institutions, or where you connect a few computers and you have a single printer. And you all must have seen it in your institutions or some offices or banks, etc., where you have one or two printers to which all the different computers are connected. And so therefore the computer to which the printer is actually connected becomes the print server, because it accepts the print command from the different clients, right? So any computer which is accepting commands, which is accepting requests from other computers through a network, is known as a server computer, right? Now when we talk about a web server is the computer which is used for hosting of websites. So websites are hosted on a web server, and the client's computers, or the devices, they access this web server through the internet, right? So that is the place where your website is actually going to be stored, where it is going to be hosted. Then we have an application server. Application server is the server on which the application programs are loaded, right? Application programs means various programs are written to process the functions which are occurring on the website, right? For example, a simplest example could be that you type your user ID and password to log into the website. Now this comparison, whether your web password and user ID is matching or it is not matching with the one that has been stored in the server, is done by a simple program which is written in a programming language, which can be written in a scripting language, which could be written in a server-side scripting language, and from there the comparison happens, right? In e-commerce, of course the applications of programs, or the code which is written is much more complicated, right? So we will be looking at what type of transactions can happen on an e-commerce portal, and for each transaction, for each kind of exchange which the consumer or the customer is having with the e-commerce site, there has to be certain programs, certain codes which will handle that kind of request of processing. Then of course we have the transaction servers. Transaction servers are those servers which will store all the transactions or all the activities that a user is going to undertake while he or she is interacting with them, with the servers or with the website or with the e-commerce portal. Database server, of course, is a very, very critical element of any web server environment, because database server is going to store the complete data of the client, the complete data of the web-based activities, the complete data about the whole environment which has been created in the e-commerce software. So the database servers, they hold all users' data, their passwords, their IDs, their shopping history, whatever transactions are happening, their purchasing histories, all that is stored in the database server. So these are very, very high-end, sophisticated servers which are there, and this is not just hardware, but they have a complementing software composition also. They have a complementing software support also, which handles this together. So it is a combination. When we say server, we mean it's a combination of hardware as well as specific softwares. Right, then of course this is the high end computing system. So here we are basically referring to the specific hardware which will be requiring. So these are high end. Why? Because they have to have a superior, they have to have a more efficient processing capability as compared to the normal computers. Then whenever you connect to a network, of course you need a proxy server also. So proxy server is another type of server which will which sort of masks the original server, and it creates an interface between the client and the server. And then you have the different type of security mechanisms which you also need to have, you also need to ensure. So security is for different aspects that you need the security. You need security for the documents, that is for your data which you have stored, the data of the portal, then the customer's data, like we will talk about the payments, how payments happen. So there that data also needs to be secured, and the security of the overall system. So security can be enabled using hardware like hardware firewalls, etc. You can have software security by using the different types of security softwares like the anti-malware softwares or antivirus softwares. There are different types of mechanisms which are used for securing the environment. Encryptions are used, cryptography is used. So different mechanisms are used for securing the data. So this is a broad outline of what are the different hardwares and softwares required when we talk about, specifically we talk about the infrastructure procurement. So when you are looking at setting up your e-business or your e-commerce portal, so you need to have all this things, all these types of hardware and software. You need to meet these requirements, only then can you set up that kind of a system. Now besides hardware and software, there is another very important term that we are using here, that is called the middleware. Right, so middleware basically it is used to bind together the different programs or different components which are running together. So different types of middleware are used in online businesses. So there can be middleware for communications, there can be middleware for management of systems and network administration. There can be middleware for security solutions, for payment solutions, and for DBMS. So these are generally, some of these are third party middleware which we use. Like for example, if we talk about communication. So how communication is happening on the within the organization or within the e-business setup. Right. If we talk about network administration, so definitely when you are hosting an e-commerce portal, or when you are hosting a website which is looking at serving the customers in a big way, definitely you need to have a robust management of an administration of your overall system as well as your network system, right? So if you talk about communication system, so there are three types of services which are used by companies for communication, right? So before we actually talk about the local or the proprietary email, we also need to understand a very key term here, that is the intranet. Right, we have always been talking about the internet, but now what we are talking about is the intranet. So internet basically is a universal network which connects computers across the universe, right? So exchange of information can take place globally on the internet. But if I say that I want an intranet which will only connect the different offices of a particular company, right, or different computers of a particular company, so that kind of network is known as the intranet. So that the access to that intranet is available only when a person connects to the intranet, right? For instance, I will give you an example. Like you have a university in which you have n number of departments and n number of colleges which are there. So for facilitating communication between those different departments and those different colleges, you set up an intranet. So people who are employees of the company, or intranet can be accessed by the outside stakeholders also, right? So it depends on the policy of the company or the policy of the organization to whom the access to the intranet is granted, right? But it is not available universally. Only the people who have access to the intranet, who have been allowed by the company to use the intranet, only they can access it. So local email, when we are talking about, so again it's a similar kind of system that we are talking about. So unlike the web based email, like we have our Google Mail or different types of these mails, so here we are not talking about that. We are talking about a very internal and private emailing system which is only going to work within that organization. So people within the company can only share information through this kind of email. It is not visible across the boundaries of the company, across the network, across the intranet of the company. So it has to be accessed within the company only. It can be given, now this email can be given to the employees, primarily it is for the employees, but then it can also be given to the external stakeholders of the company or the external stakeholders of the business. Like for example, you can give it to your vendors, you can give it to your your suppliers, you can give it to your customers, or you can give it to your the finance people, or different types. It depends, again it depends on the company's policies and rules to who all the access to this email will be given, right? Then of course you have the web based email. Web based email, as we all know, we have been using it, so this is available across. So this allows free flow of information without any kind of barrier. And then of course there are some online service portals also which allow us the people to communicate. Like for example, you have you have the blogging sites, or you have the news groups, or you have the use groups. So different types of online service portals are also available which facilitate communication across the company, within the company and outside the company also. So this is one of the very important middlewares which is used by companies, by e-commerce portals, so that to facilitate the exchange of information, exchange of data within and outside the company, right? The next middleware which is very commonly used is the system management and network administration, right? So as I already told you, that because this business is running on the network, it is running on the internet, so it requires a very robust system of managing this system, right? So we need a networked systems management policy for this, how the network is going to be created. We need dedicated people who are system administrators who will look at the possibilities of setting up of the network, right? What will be the configuration of the network, what will be the topology of the network, how the different devices, how the different systems will be connected, what will be the backup. Then another very important issue in network system management will be the security of the network. Security is of the prime importance when you are talking to people outside your organization, because today the customers or today the consumers are very aware. They know that a particular site which does not show the security features, then it may not be preferred by the customers, right? So the system administrator or the network management team, they have to ensure that all the digital certificates are in place, wherever required they are displayed to the customers also. The different encryption mechanisms which are used, because e-commerce will entail financial transactions also. The data of say credit cards and debit cards will also be exchanged. So security becomes all the more important, because we have seen in the past also that if a particular e-commerce portal does not is not able to suffice to the security needs, and if there is any kind of breach of data of the user, it could be the private personal data or it could be the financial data, then it leads to a very bad business name. So branding, the brand name is also very critically dependent upon how secure the e-commerce portal is, right? Then another very important aspect is the performance. Now here what we are looking at is the traffic which is coming to our website through the network. So it means that it is something like, if you have a shop and your shop is, the road in front of your shop is blocked, or the road in front of your shop has been dug up, right? So definitely your performance is going to come down, or you are not able to service the customers in the due time, if the customers have to wait for too long to get a response from you, right? So all these aspects, that is the speed or the accessibility of the website or your e-commerce portal, it overall determines the performance level, right? And we all know that in the competitive world, performance of networks will critically dependent on the performance, or will critically determine the performance of your e-business activity. So therefore, performance of the network is very, very important. Reliability is again a very important attribute which has to be kept in mind when a system is being designed, when a network is being designed. So reliability means that the people, they have trust in the website. So if you are able to give the security, if you are able to ensure a good performance, definitely your portal will be considered as a reliable portal, and you will get good user support, you will get good customer support also, right? So resource management and distribution, again we have to manage the the whatever resources we have in the best possible manner, so as to ensure the best delivery models to the customers and ensure the success of our e-business venture. So it's also very important that whatever resources are there, whether it is human resource or it is technical resource, they are critically divided. There is a proper strategy in which the resources will be distributed. The limited resources will be distributed to attain a maximized performance, to attain maximized levels of efficiency. Then user interface is also a very important part, that is how your system is interacting with the user. If there are too many barriers, if your e-commerce sites ask for too many, say it asks for user logins again and again, or if it if it does not allow the user to save the passwords, or if it does not allow different types of experiences, like a user can log in through a mobile device, or the user can log in through a computer, or the user can log in through different types of devices. So if that kind of experience cannot be given to the user, then definitely there will be a big risk of your e-business in failing, because the user interface is the user's experience. So a user will only come back to the portal if the experience was a good experience, a comfortable experience, right? And then of course within this only you will have the decisions, the long-term decisions which need to be taken about purchasing and procuring. So you need to understand that what are the elements or what are the components of infrastructure that the business needs to purchase, and those which could be procured otherwise, like you could rent it also. Like for instance, I can give you an example of a web server, right? So a web server is basically a space which you need to host your website. Now it is a decision which needs to be taken by the management of the e-commerce business house, whether they want a dedicated web server or they will be okay with having a hosting space on a shared web server, right? So definitely the cost benefit analysis is required for these decisions to be taken. If it is a dedicated web server, the company will have to pay higher costs, but then the issues of security, performance, reliability, etc., they will be taken care of. If it is a shared web server, then definitely you will have to share the space. The cost will definitely come down than having a dedicated server, but then at the same time you will have the issues, you will need to have more concerns related to your security, performance and reliability, because shared web servers can have these kinds of issues also. So therefore these decisions also need to be taken very carefully by the system management and the network administration team, as in what resources needs to be purchased, what resources need to be owned dedicatedly, and what resources can be procured through other mediums like renting or leasing or things like that. So we will be continuing with this. Thank you.